folks, and welcome to the Anti-Heroes podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. How are you doing? You know, here at the top, I am going to do my mission statement again. I'm going to explain to you what this podcast is. This is for the uninitiated. This might be your first time listening. I haven't done this in a while. This is my podcast where I interview guitar players that I enjoy, guys that I like, guys that aren't always on the cover of guitar magazines. But sometimes they are, sometimes some of these guys are actual guitar heroes. They just happen to be people that I'm interested in because I find as an adult, all I really do is sit around and obsess about music and guitar players and all things guitar. And so I figured this would be a good way, a good outlet for that. And it has been. It's been just one of my favorite things in the world. And I'm so glad to be able to do this. I'm so glad you're listening. I'm so glad you're taking time out of your day. So hi, there it is. There's this podcast. This is the Anti-Heroes, folks. Welcome to it. Today, I get to talk to another one of my favorite guitar players. This is a guy that I know very well. We have toured together, as you'll hear. This is Ryan Patterson from the band Coliseum, from the band FOTOCRIME. I didn't really talk to Ryan about it, but there's a common theme on this podcast where it's guys that weren't from the coasts. I have a lot in common with these sort of people. I wasn't from one of the coasts. We had to kind of build something out of what we had, which wasn't much. We were able to glean whatever we could. This was before the internet, folks, where we were just trying to sort of build our own culture, our own personality, our own figure out what we were into by piecemealing the sort of, little droplets of whatever that was coming to the local record store or we were putting that together and making our own sort of pastiche of counterculture. And usually it provided a different take on things, not such a sort of carbon copy of what else was cool and relevant and whatever. We were making it our own. And Ryan definitely has made it his own. And we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about post-punk and post-hardcore. Ryan's always managed to be able to combine those two elements. And, those are my favorite two types of music, not specifically hardcore, not specifically punk rock, not specifically new wave or hardcore music or whatever it might be, but sort of variants of all of those. And Ryan's been able to do that in just such a cool way. So he explains all of that. And man, what a great conversation. I don't get to talk to this guy enough, so I'm really glad that he gave me his time today. So I am going to shut up, and we are going to get into my interview with Ryan Patterson. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Zach.
How's it going, buddy?
Very, very well. How
good,
are you?
Man. I'm really good. It's so good to see you because we toured together. How long ago was that now?
More than a decade.
Which is awful. That sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks. But you have gone on. You've been so prolific in the interim, and I want to talk about all of that because for anybody unengaged or uninitiated, they should initiate and engage themselves. My guest today is Ryan Patterson. I've already done an intro. He is from many great bands. You might know him from Coliseum. In the interim, since Coliseum's disbanding, you have had FOTOCRIME, which is really exciting. I want to talk about all that. But now we're on the heels of Coliseum's sort of return. And this will probably come out after that is more of you might have even played a show because I do these in advance, but I want to get into all of it. And of course, we'll get into guitar, stupid nerd shit.
Yes.
But anyway, so I guess we'll start there. What brought about the Coliseum sort of return?
Well, yeah. So Coliseum ended in 2015, and mainly because I was burnt out. We'd done everything, and as everybody who's in a band knows, sometimes you just feel like you can't get over the hump. And I felt like we were constantly battling up up the tiniest hump and just couldn't get over it. And when I was just beaten down. So we stopped and I was able to really have like a really nice break from that band and really appreciate it and see it for what it was and maintain a really close friendship with Carter and Kahan, the bass player and drummer of Coliseum, who were both in the band around the last decade or so. And did Photocrime, still doing Photocrime, and we've done a bunch. We put out 4 albums and toured a ton. And so Carter and Kahan and I were always in touch all the time, just talking about movies, and we send music back and forth, and just
Yeah.
that great former bandmate friendship where it's like the activity of the band ended, but the friendship just kept going.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we talk as much as we did, you know, when we weren't active before. So during the pandemic, after I finished Photocrime's third album, I was just pumped and didn't want to stop making music. I'm sure you're the same way. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I never want to stop. I always have ideas. So I just started writing these like fast, hardcore D beat and skank beat songs and sent the demos to Carter and Kahan and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to do this?" Yeah. So we bounced tracks back and forth. People would come here. I have a little studio here. So we were doing that. And, but we didn't want it to be Coliseum because Coliseum went on this kind of long trajectory from being a D beat hardcore band to kind of ending up in like the post hardcore realm, way more
Yeah.
melodic. And I didn't want to, I'm very contrarian, like I
Yeah.
didn't want to go back and be what people might have, we had to fight against people that didn't want us to change as Coliseum. So I didn't want to go back to square one and feel like we'd said, we went through all this process and now we're back here. Not that hardcore is like back. I don't, I just see these as different sounds. I don't see them as like different levels.
Sure.
But so anyway, we wrote this fucking ripping 10-song hardcore album, and it's just going to be called CLSM. So it's like an abbreviation of Coliseum. It's a new Coliseum record, but it's not a new Coliseum record. I liked it. It was
Yeah.
weird and confusing. Remember when records were mysterious?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So like,
Well,
you know,
and that's something I've always loved about you, and as a fan of yours, and we've talked about that. You sort of David Bowie'd, you know, you reinvented yourself, and you were by every measure sort of a hardcore band early on with
Mhm.
Coliseum, and it was, you know, mathy and uh, disjointed and blast beaty, and you had all kinds of elements going on in there, and then you just turned it all on its head and was like, hey, I am a creator, I am a musician, I'm an explorer, and this is what this next record's going to sound like. You're either with us or you're not. And as you had said before, the alienated fans and the fans that were on the journey with you were on the journey with you. And then it gained its own,
Yeah,
you know, yeah, its own following. I think there's fans of Coliseum that were sort of throughout, but also fans of the early work and then of the later work, and they are two discernible things. I was a fan of all of it. I think it's all great, and I'm a fan of yours. But I remember having many talks about, the wonders of Killing Joke, and you not being ashamed to sort of wear that those and post-hardcore influences on your shirt sleeves, which those are my two musics, like
right.
post-punk and post-hardcore. That is what. So when those records were coming out, I was here for all of it. That was just like, that's why I was like, we got to get this band on tour with us because I want to watch them play every night, and I was so lucky that I got to. um, and then Fotocrime was sort of an extension of what your post-hard a post-punk sort of thing, or it is sort of an extension of that, of course, with your own flair done to it. But going into that, what was the sort of impetus for wanting to do Fotocrime? Was this sort of the same sort of situation?
Yeah, it's weird because I sometimes I think about if we made new Coliseum proper music, it's I feel like I'm making it with Photocrime, so it's very hard to me for me to think like what would I do if Coliseum actually reformed and started making new music. I don't think it would be very different from what I'm doing. But yeah, Photocrime, I think the initial inspiration was I wanted to make a record entirely on my own. Like with
Yeah.
each record I do, I have maybe I don't set out this way, but there's like a focus of I want to accomplish this certain thing. And for the first Photocrime record coming out of Coliseum, which had been I was the leader of the band and the founding member, but it was very much a band, and you were always depending on everybody else. And as bands grow, they start to spread out geographically. So, every practice required flights or fucking drive times and all that kind of shit. And I wanted to make a record that I played everything and did everything and wrote every single song. And it was very much in the post-punk realm. I wanted to use drum machines and synths, and I wanted to explore my singing voice in a different way. And so I've followed that, and Photocrime, each record is a little different, but it's generally in this post-punk, very melodic thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny, like what you're saying. I see one thing I learned with Coliseum is that people basically want a band to start and finish more or less the same.
Sure.
And people have a hard time with that. Like we were saying, Bowie or Iggy or Killing Joke. So many bands that we love or artists we love, they just reinvented themselves and they changed all the time. But for me, I find that was always very hard to do. Maybe when you're at like a David Bowie level, you can flip the script a bit. When you're at like a Coliseum level and you flip the script, like you're pulling the rug out of a handful of thousands of people versus like messing with millions of people's brains. So
right.
But yeah, I like all that, man. And like my heart is like post-punk, punk, and hardcore. That's like that's my love. Like I love Discharge and Depeche Mode in equal measure, and those things are always mixing in my brain and coming out in different ways. So that would be why it's there.
But I'm going to stop you there. It's like so novel. Most guys we know that are in bands that we know of say the same thing. They say the same thing. Oh, I'm into Depeche Mode. But then they put out this like homogenized drivel of whatever that might be, of sort of this sort of regurgitated version of whatever music it is they're playing. And you were in a hardcore band, and it's so hard to get anyone to come listen to your band. We both know that. Yeah. You have to circle the globe a countless amount of times until someone starts showing up by hook or crook and against all odds. And you had that with Coliseum. You were doing that, and then you just said, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want to do. And you started over essentially under the same moniker. And you were still playing some older songs, but I mean, shit, by the time you were on tour with us, you guys had that newer record come out. You had a new drummer, and you were playing maybe one of your older songs, but you were really sort of laying into the newer stuff. And I just thought that was so fucking commendable. I was so inspired by that creativity and by that artistic vision, where I was just like, fuck, man, this guy's doing it. It was so impressive and inspiring. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I
really appreciate that, man.
Absolutely.
I
appreciate you doing it because it was influential,
That's really cool to hear. I mean, I think that with Coliseum, I love everything we did, and I particularly really love the first record, the self-titled album, and God Damage. And then, I was in my mid to late 20s, and we signed to Relapse Records, and we were touring with Converge. And I started to feel insecure about my songwriting because I don't like technical songs. I don't like technical songwriting. I like chords. I like melody. I like, all the hardcore I love, even if it's Discharge or like Void.
Yeah.
There's a directness to it. But I started to feel insecure that I needed to have all this extra bullshit in my songs. And so I kind of lost my way. And then we kind of took a step into this industry of touring where we were touring with bands we liked, but it was kind of this metal industry. And we did a long tour with Napalm Death where promoters would try to kick us and the other opening bands off the bill if there weren't enough ticket sales. And Napalm Death, to their credit, were awesome. And they were like, fuck you. This show goes on. If you're cutting our money, we're paying the bands out of our pocket. But suddenly I felt like I was part of like this geared system that I didn't give a shit about, and so when we just had to take a step out of that. And part of that was like, we wanted to do some things with more melody, but it was also like, we want to kind of give a fucking boot to the face of this thing we've suddenly been in. And it wasn't the fault of anybody we worked with, no label, no band. It was like there was this industry, and we didn't want to be a part of it, and we wanted to tour with people we liked. Whether it was like
Yeah.
tour with you guys and it's fun and we're playing to fucking tens of thousands of people, and then we tour with Doom Riders the next day and we played to
Right.
200 people, and we just wanted to do whatever we wanted to do, and that's maybe to my own detriment. I'm just always going to do what I'm passionate about and what feels right to me in the moment,
Yeah.
and that might not mean much more than like like respect might be all I'll ever be able to cash in, on, but like that's all I
Well,
got,
I think you definitely have that in spades. If
and I
respect,
appreciate that.
if respect were dollars, you would be a millionaire, my friend.
Thank you,
But
thank you.
and as well as you should do what you just said. I mean, as well, we all should
Yeah,
be able to do what you said. But you know as well as I do, once commerce and things like that are sort of bandied about or a carrot in front of you, um, things change. You
hmm,
know, and I mean, even the metal scene. Um, no matter what it is, it may not be monetary units, but if you were a fast band or you were heavier, and then maybe your newer work isn't as fast or heavy, you're written off the island. You
yeah,
are, and it becomes an issue of artistic integrity. It becomes an issue of your of quantifying somebody's art, and measuring it up against their past value or their past work, and comparing it. It's a real judgmental scene at sometimes. Just like punk or just like anything
right,
else.
yeah,
If I mean, we face that in Rise Against for sure. Rise Against definitely used to have records that were faster and more punk rock, and now we just make the records we make, and maybe something fast happens or whatever. But you do get that shit thrown in your face, and it's just bananas to me. You know?
yeah. I mean, I think I don't know, man. I mean, I think as an artist, how you perceive how others relate to you, and then even how you perceive someone else's art, it's so fluid. It's like
Yeah.
I there are bands I've loved forever. Superchunk would be a good example. Like I fucking love four Superchunk records, right? And
Right.
then then there might be one where I like one song or one where I like no songs, and it's fluid. And I don't take it personally against them. I don't get mad if a
Yeah.
record comes out and I don't love every song,
Yeah.
and I think, but even I, as an artist, sometimes I am like, well, why don't people love this or that or whatever? But then when I create, I just can't. I don't think about that. I just shut all that
Yeah.
off and I just make what I want to make, and I just am shocked and amazed that I'm able to do it and able to have like all these friends and all these kind of
Yeah.
things. Like it's awesome, man. It's just unbelievable to me that I was able to do all this, just like you, like all of us, just based on like these ideas we made and
Right.
these things that inspired us when we were freaky little kids, like
Right.
skateboarders and maniacs, and like we go around the world, and it's really fucking
It's
beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
It is. It's a common theme on this show, and I say it a lot that I still don't take any of this for granted. And I think we are still maniac children.
Yeah,
It definitely this lifestyle of it's arrested development. We are frozen in time. I still am into the same things I was into when I was a teenager.
yeah,
I'm into the same bands. I'm into the same culture. It is my culture. I don't feel like I've grown. Hopefully, I've grown emotionally, but I know sometimes I I question even that.
right, right.
Um, well, let's get into the nerdy part of it. Your gear choices over um, all of your bands. I mean, how much has that changed with Photochrome? I've noticed you use Gretsch stuff a little bit more with Photochrome.
Yeah,
Am I
yeah.
wrong in thinking that? Is that a concerted effort?
Somewhat like once I once Coliseum leaned more into like that Killing Joke kind of thing, I became really obsessed with Geordie from Killing Joke's guitar
Yeah,
sound, and of
and
course he
and who isn't? I mean, no, no. Well,
right.
actually, let me back up. Not enough people are. Guys like you and me are, and I noticed that. And I mean, Jesus Christ, I could do 15 episodes on just that guy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, so the two things that I feel like are essential to his sound are, of course, his Gibson, which is a huge hollow body. I think it's from the
Mhm.
50s. unruly, and then he has those Bell Electro Labs automatic double trackers. So he basically
Yeah.
has like it's essentially a chorus, but it's an external unit that I think was made in the 70s that he bought that I can't seem to find one. It's like that's like the only
Hmm.
holy grail piece of gear for me. And at some point in Coliseum's run, after really obsessing over all that, I started playing a Duesenberg center block semi hollow
Yeah.
and really
Okay.
love that guitar. And they got me a really good price on it, and it was fucking awesome. And I played it for years, played it into Coliseum. Then, I'm sorry, into Fotocrime, and then really started exploring Gretsch's. And my favorite guitar is a Gretsch Eddie Cochran signature
Oh yeah,
model.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
so something about it is like really, it's like very soft playing. I don't know what it is. It's like the same strings are on that as all my other guitars, but it just has a really, this is the dumbest adjective, but like buttery kind of
yeah.
feeling. Like,
No, I get that.
yeah, and it's really beautiful and feels great and sounds great, but it's fully hollow, and playing a live loud show fully hollow body is like
Yeah,
impossible. It's like
yeah.
the feedback is hard to deal with, and I started to feel when I was playing that live like I wasn't playing guitar anymore. I felt like I was. They helped me out with getting Gretsch did with and Fender with getting a Silver Falcon, which is center
Oh
block,
wow,
and it's made to be played live. So it's really nice, but it has a cinder block, so it maintains feedback control.
wow,
So those, and then a Jaguar is like my other. I use a Jag all the time in recording.
wow.
Um, my other guitar heroes, Roland S. Howard from the Birthday Party and Crime and City
Oh
Solution
yeah,
and stuff.
sure.
So the Jag and the hollow bodies are like my thing. And then I got into the Electro Harmonics clone theory,
Okay.
which is just an analog chorus, but I felt like it was the closest thing to those old Bell ADTs that Geordie used, where
Yeah.
it has a little bit of a weird, it does a weird mid-range thing where it kind of boosts the mid-range. It's kind of noisy. It has a really nice doubling effect. And so, I mean, my clone theory chorus pedal stays on all the time. It never goes
Wow.
off. I
No
mean,
shit.
I don't even know if the fucking switch works. It's the same one, has been on every tour since like maybe 2008 I've done.
Well, correct me, walk me through that a bit because you might not understand more of it about than I do. Jordy used two of those, correct?
Maybe, possibly, I'm not sure. Yeah,
And
I think he does like 3 amps at times. Yeah.
yes, and so he had his those Bell Labs set at just a tad bit different from each other. So there was a they were choruses, but there was also a chorusing effect between them. If I'm not mistaken, I
Hmm.
don't know. I've read so many times he's walked through that, and it still confuses me a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at some point he kind of had like a 3 amp setup where there's just three levels of delay of like, of a little bit of like, there's got one and then two's behind that and three's
Hmm.
behind that. Although when I saw them, he was using like maybe like a line six pedal and like some kind of,
The the
you
green
know,
line six he uses
yeah,
just kind of a regular line six delay.
yeah. So he wasn't using anything fancy when I saw them.
Yeah,
And it still sounded great. It sounded like him,
but his is a very quick slapback delay. It's just a
Yeah,
very quick echo, you
yeah,
know. So it seems like you could maybe get a semblance of it with just a reverb as well, maybe like a
for
chorus
sure.
and a reverb. Yeah,
Yeah. So I feel like the clone theory has that it has that washy chorus, but it is like it's an interesting sound. It kind of hollows it out a little more too, while also kind of boosting this mid.
huh?
So that's my favorite thing, man. Like that's what I use all the time. And I have a bunch of other shit like from Inner Ear. I bought when Don Z was closing Inner Ear. I bought a couple of pieces of gear. One of which is those Rockman, the guy from
Yeah.
Boston.
Oh, of
He
course, the
he's
Rockmans.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
Tom
the
Scholes.
did yes, the stereo chorus. I bought the one that was at Inner Ear Studio
Wow.
and use it all the time. And it has your dry signal and then your chorus signal, and it has the level of delay in the chorus.
Whoa.
And I use that all the time on synths, guitars, vocals, everything when
Wow.
recording. And I don't. I was wonder like what records it was used on, but I'm sure it was at inner ear since the 80s and all sorts of
Yeah.
cool stuff went through that.
I'm sure Jay Robbins used it a few times.
For sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's funny you mentioned that Gretsch, Eddie Cochran. My buddy Dan Phillips from True Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan. I've grown up with Dan. We're from Dallas, and
Yeah.
my brother was in a band with Dan. My best friend in the world was in a band called Slow Ride with Dan Phillips, and Dan and I started a band called Armstrong together. Anyway, I've known Dan for over 30 years, and he is the only other guy I know that he still plays that guitar
Okay.
actually, and yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's sort of was it like a gray burst almost?
Mine is a more recent one. It's orange.
Oh,
It's
okay.
orange with gold hardware. Yeah.
I might have even been thinking about the Dwayne Eddy, the
You might
Gretsch.
be. Okay.
Yeah, the Dwayne Eddy. I know Dan had like two country gents, or he had a country gent, and he has that either Eddie Cochran or Dwayne Eddy. I might be getting it mixed up. And he has like a and Gibson L6S, and he's just always used those guitars. It doesn't matter what. Yeah, what a good player Dan is as well. Good guy.
Oh yeah. Great sound
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. I forgot. Why wouldn't you and Dan know each other? You guys are both originals. That's for sure.
Coliseum and True Widow played together numerous times. Yeah.
That
They're
that
great
makes
folks. Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I got to get Dan on here. Anyway, one thing that I thought about when we talked about doing this in a Coliseum, you had that first act, and that was at a time
Mm-hmm.
when that company had been making you know, like beginner guitars that you could buy at Walmart, but then also these custom made boutique guitars that a lot of our friends, you and me's friends, were playing at the time. And you had one that was like a silver burst RD artist shape, like a Gibson
Yeah.
RD artist shape. And I just remember you guys would have me on stage to play Danzig's Am I Evil with you every night.
Yeah.
And you would hand me your guitar, and it was like, it was like playing. It looked like a child playing his dad's guitar. That was a huge guitar, man.
It was. I pulled it out with this CLSM, the Coliseum record. I pulled it out because it was in like the biggest road case, right? And so it was like I had all my other shit out, but it was kind of like back under a bunch of boxes, and I pulled it out recently. And yeah, I mean, I was out of my mind. Like basically, they sent me the bass body because they had this RD bass shape
Yeah.
that they were doing as like a stock thing. They sent that to me, and I said, okay, I want that, but I want an inch bigger all around. And I mean, the guitar is heavy as fuck, and it was something where I really got used to playing it, but where it's set, how certain guitars, if the neck joint, the neck joint sits, just
Mhm.
totally dictates the feel of the guitar. And the neck joint on that is kind of far up because the body's so big and it's that RD with the offset. So when you play it, your hands are in a completely different place than on any other
Yeah.
guitar. But it was awesome, man. It's just a great guitar, and like I still have it. And that was such an interesting time. Did they make guitar for you at all? A guitar for you?
No,
Okay.
I think I met those guys, and it kind of went south really quick over there. I don't know what happened, but they just stopped doing that thing.
Well, it was like that time period where like Scion was giving money to all these bands and like
Yeah.
all these fucking people, like somebody cool worked at some company and was like, hey, let's dump, you know, untold thousands of dollars into like Coliseum and Torch and a bunch of shit that's never going to return on investment. It's like making me a custom guitar serves no purpose and selling guitars to kids, and I think they had like the guitar that plugged into a Volkswagen, like Slash is
Oh
on the
yeah.
commercial.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, they were giving me all these fucking free standard guitars, which were fine. But yeah, they made that guitar for me, and I remember they were making tons of custom guitars for people, but
Yeah.
people weren't thinking about it because when you get a custom guitar, a Les Paul or a Telly or whatever, like those have been honed in over decades. And when they reach our hands, they are perfect.
Yeah.
And we've all
Yeah.
grown up playing those guitars. So that's what feels like a guitar. Or when a guitar is custom made out of nowhere and it's put in your hands, every fucking element of it is different, right? Like the weight,
Yeah.
whether it's neck heavy, all that shit. I mean, I've had other people build me custom guitars that as soon as you put it on, you're like, man, this meets everything I told you, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And my first act just feels good. It feels perfect. I
That's
really
good.
lucked out because I know a lot of people that got them and then ended up selling them because it was like, oh, this is a neat thing, but I just can't play it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's like I have a handful, you know, I'm sure you do too, of guitars that you're like, this is a moment in time. This is a stretch of years. This is
Hmm.
that guitar of that moment. It's totally that for me. Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, you said a mouthful there because I've also had guitars that, for all intents and purposes, should be the greatest guitar ever that I had custom made by
Hmm.
whatever builder at the time. And you're right, and you get it, and it's an unquantifiable thing. You get it,
Yeah.
and it's just like, God damn it, you know immediately this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And beyond that, it's not gonna fucking feel right.
Right. Right.
You know,
It's a terrible feeling. I mean, I had a
it
guy make me
is.
a guitar that was so rad, and I got it, and I was like, "Fuck!" You know, you took it
Yep.
on tour, and you're just like, "This isn't working out." Like,
Yep.
I mean, that's like, you know, yeah,
And then if you didn't, thankfully because of what we do, we sometimes we get things for free. Other
hmm,
times we get deals, but we still paying out the ass. And you just paid out the ass for a guitar that's going to sit in your boat and be a goddamn backup now.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and you're not going to tell the dude like, hey, dude, this isn't right because it's just not right. He can
right,
change whatever the fuck, and it's just not going to be right.
yeah. It's hard,
Um,
and that's part of why we all play what we play. I mean, nothing feels like a Les Paul. It's like that's how I feel about custom amps. It's like
mm-hmm.
we've all gone through that, and I've had custom amps that sounded awesome, but I always go back to a JCM 800 because
Yeah,
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's what you've been hearing your whole life, and that is what makes it perfect, right? Is it that thing that this is the JCM 800 I've heard on every fucking record from Dag Nasty to Slayer to whatever rock
yeah,
record, you know? But that's the ultimate guitar sound to me. Even one of my dream amps was a Silver Jubilee, and I got a combo a few years ago, and it's awesome. Marshall Silver Jubilee 212, but
yeah.
it still is weird. It's like it doesn't
I'm
sound to me like an 800, you know?
I have a Jubilee, one of the newer ones, and it's the same fucking thing. And
Yeah.
we're getting into the profiling thing now, and we have Kempers and we have quad cortexes, and I swear to God, I find on both of those with the Kemper, I went to the 2203 because they can't call it the 800, and I put a tube screamer, a virtual tube screamer in front of it. There's the tone, and then with the quad cortex, which I have right here. I don't know if you fucked with these things yet,
I
but
haven't, no.
Jesus Christ. There's one called the Crunchy 2203, and it's the same thing, an 800 with a tube screamer from it. And I went through all the presets that I already had, and they all sound amazing. It's all great. And then you get to that, and you're like, there it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
there it
Yeah,
is.
Photocrime has been using those Black Star, are they called amped?
Yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah.
little, yeah. So we have the amped 3, which is amazing. It's a 100-watt solid state amp as a pedal, and then it has 4 different effects. It has boost, mod, delay, and reverb. So it's
Wow.
great. I mean, I got rid of a bunch of pedals, and it sounds awesome, and it's super easy to travel with. Plug right into the the speakers, but it has like the classic Black Star, really smooth distortion. Then it has a USA, which is a Mesa, but you know, it's like I had to go to the UK 2203
Yep.
EL34, like had to like get as close to 800. I mean, that's what I go
It's
back
just the
to
thing.
over and over. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny. I was actually just going to ask you about your amp choices currently.
Yeah, I mean, with Photocrime, we went for the first 6 years. We went to the JC 120, the Jazz Chorus, and it's awesome. You know, it has that sound, that kind of flat, hard sound that once the pedals, particularly the chorus and delay, go into it, it sounds like the '80s. It sounds like all the shit we
Sure.
like. But like I was saying earlier, I started to feel like I wasn't playing guitar. I felt like I was making hitting notes and making strings vibrate into this box that by design has no personality.
Right, right, right. That's a good
And
way to put that. Yeah.
you know, it's like I started to just feel like I'm hitting notes and it's not searing in that way I want. So we went to these Black Star things, and they're cool. I mean, it's like I if we were a bigger band with more money and more resources, and I would probably go back to touring with a 800 half stack, but for what we do and like our stage setup, we have some like lights we built and shit like that. Like this pedal thing is really cool. But
Is it
yeah, I mean,
powered? Is it
it's
powered?
power. Yeah, yeah, the
It,
pedals. Yeah,
Yeah, because there's a lot of those profilers now, or like the Iridium, the Strymon. There, you have to have a power amp, which there's shit. Electro Harmonics have that power amp pedal. There's
Hmm.
the Seymour Duncan Power Stage, the 200 watt, whatever. But this one it's actually powered. It's just
Yeah,
a
it's like speaker cable goes from my pedal board from that out back to the 212
wow.
cab,
And so it's
and
just
it's great.
a floor unit.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't
So we
even seen
both have
those.
those. It's cool and cheap, $600, and we have cabinets 212s that I actually built for the end of Coliseum. I use them on the later Coliseum tours. They're just 212 cabs my friend built with
Wow,
65-watt Weber speakers. I did all the finishing, like the Tolex thing and stuff,
wow.
and they're white, and so they're super cool. And so that's what we've been using, and it's fun to bring those back because that was something that like was an arts and crafts project that
Yeah, yeah.
works and we tour with. But yeah, I mean, I'm in my collection. There's a JC 120 twin reverb, 50 and 100-watt 800s, the Silver Jubilee, maybe a couple other things. But just it's like you just want to go back to those classic
Yeah.
sounds. It's like the twin. It's like I don't want to tour with a twin personally, but when I want
Hmm.
that reverb tank, just bouncing
Yeah.
off itself, like I gotta have that.
Yeah.
So I go through all that stuff. I should tell you about one thing. Let me pull it up so I can look at it. That I think you'll really like.
Yeah. Let's see it. Ryan has now stepped away from the camera,
Well, I'm here.
and he is coming back.
All right. I'm here in my little studio, so I've got all my shit all around me. So this thing is called the Barkus Berry
Whoa.
Standard Preamp, and it's a little like runs on a 9 volt. It has sensitivity, volume, treble, and bass. And I think what it was made for is for like wind instruments as a
Whoa.
preamp, like for that, for you to run a mic into. But I was digging around on the old Dag Nasty site, Dag House, which
Uh,
isn't updated anymore, but there was a tour diary from, or like tour photos, I'm sorry, recording photos from when they did Minority of One, like an early 2000s record. They recorded it inner ear. And there were all these photos, and they had a photo of this fucking thing. And Brian Baker had his caption for it was, "We used this on early Minor Threat records when we didn't have distortion pedals."
whoa.
So I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty weird." And rather than punish him, and because I sell Dag Nasty's merch on Shirt Killer now, and I'm in touch with him and stuff, but I didn't want to be a super nerd to him,
Yeah.
and I found this fucking thing for $30 on eBay, and you run into a clean Marshall, and it has that sound, man. It's just
No
that,
fucking way.
yeah, it's like, it's just really, it's like not distortion. It's just like this little circuitry pushed to its limit.
Right.
So I used this a bunch, almost every song on that CLSM record, that new hardcore record that we have coming out, because
See,
it,
that makes sense because there is something about, like, say, stand up, for instance,
mhm,
that it is, you can tell it's a Les Paul and a Marshall, a Lyle Preslar, but there is something else going on. And you knew it's like, well, what else could it be? I mean, yes, he could have a Seymour, a DiMarzio Super Distortion and a pickup or whatever, but there is something. It's kind of like the ACDC thing with the solo Dallas Schaefer like wireless unit, where
mhm,
there was just a little bit of gain, and now they're making that as a
right.
pedal as well. It's like, there was some other element, and so many people could not figure out that sound for so long, and then they broke it down with like, oh, it was the little gain that they're getting in that wireless.
Right, right.
So that makes sense, man.
So this might be that. I mean, I don't know. For all I know, I should fucking make a pedal of this thing, but it's
You should
it's
make a
weird.
pedal of that
It's
thing.
gnarly. It's loud, and
You know why you should make a pedal thing? Because those Dallas Schaefer things are fucking crazy expensive now.
oh,
I,
really? Okay.
that pedal is nuts. It's
Fuck, that's
it's
crazy.
fucking crazy, man. Um, I'll ask you real quick. It's I ask this for everybody. If inevitably, what we do, what we've done, getting in bands, touring, and things like that. Do you have one that got away? Do you have like a piece of gear, or just something that got away?
Man, that's hard to say. The things that got away came back to me, which is to
Oh,
say
I
that.
love those stories.
So there's two stories. One of which is in 1999. I was like basically like couch surfing, had a couple guitars, had my amps, and for some reason stayed the night at our drummer's house with his parents in a nice neighborhood. and I had a Les Paul Studio, a 90 Les Paul Studio, and a 76 Gibson L6S. And I left them in my van for some dumb reason. Came out in the morning, and they had been stolen.
Okay.
And uh, L6 never came back, but like 25 years later, the studio, the Les Paul Studio, came back. It showed up in a store in town, and I contacted them, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is the same serial number." And they sold it back to me for what they bought it for, and it had
That's
come from a
cool.
pawn shop. So that one kind of went around in a circle. And then the other story is that at some point, for some idiot reason, when Coliseum was touring a bunch, my 50-watt 800 had just been sitting in its case for like a couple years. I hadn't used it, and I thought, I'm not using this. I want a twin. So I took it and traded in for a twin. And I don't know why, because that was like my amp. It was like I love that 50-watt 800. And somebody posted a photo of it at the guitar store sitting on the Coliseum road case, and a person bought it in Seattle from the store in Louisville and shipped it up there. Years later, I always regretted this. I immediately regretted this, this trade. And years later, this guy in Chicago came up to me and said, "Hey, man, I bought your 50-watt 800 from the shop in Louisville when I lived in
Shit.
Seattle, and now I'm back here." He came to a Coliseum show, and I said, "Man, if you ever sell that thing," and so he did a few years later sell it back to me in
Wow.
my same case and everything. So it came back, and it will never ever leave my possession.
Wow.
So
I
a lot
love
of
those
things like
stories.
that, man. Yeah, like at some point, my twin, I sold slash traded to my cousin. And this is a dark tale, but my cousin Matt, who's Coliseum's first drummer, he died in 2020, and when we went through all his stuff, he had the twin that had been
Oh,
mine, so it came back to me as well.
wow.
So there's these few things that like made their way back into my realm, and
Wow. It just seems
you
like
know,
that's gear you were meant to have, you
yeah,
know?
and they're like things that really mean a lot to me
Yeah.
on every level. They're the sonically what I love, but they also have had these tales and return, and it's really
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I don't know when this will air, but I interviewed Greg Norton from Husker Du,
Oh,
and
awesome.
with all that guy's done, he's never gotten anything stolen. He has all of his gear.
Whoa,
He has everything he's ever had. I was like, that is fucking mind blowing.
that's amazing.
It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I did forget to ask you. So with the new Coliseum stuff, did you use your old gear, or what guitars did you use? The hollow body, like the Gretsch stuff for the new Coliseum, or did you use solid body stuff?
I use solid body stuff. I
Yeah,
used a Les Paul Custom Classic and a Jaguar. I have a kind of pieced together Jaguar that has like a custom built body, a Squire neck with a Fender decal,
yeah,
and
yeah.
some really cheap pickups, but it sounds really beautiful. So I use the Jag and the Les Paul for the most part. I use a Dan Armstrong copy on a few songs, but I can't play that thing. It's like too small for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
But so the Jag, the Jag's like my secret weapon because it just cuts through and it
Yeah.
really rips, and it's hard to use live because it's so particular. But most of the sound on the CLSM record is the Les Paul and the Jag in stereo through um, mostly 100-watt 800 and the Silver Jubilee combo.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and sometimes with this Barkus Berry preamp.
You,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny. I love that the Barkus Berry made it to it. You heard it here,
Yes.
folks. Barkus Berry Prim. And you seriously, you need to make that new pedal.
I do. I
Um,
do.
John from Baroness he said on here, and he was right that a Les Paul can bury a building. It can just waylay a building, but a Fender guitar is more of a surgical instrument. It's more of a cutting instrument, and it's true.
Yeah.
It really does cut through, and and like you said earlier, with sort of a theme of this particular interview with you, it's like, is it what we have been conditioned to hear, or is it our actual taste, or did that condition our taste so much? I'm at the point now where I am Les Paul SG Telecaster. That's all I
Yeah.
want to do. That's all I care about doing. I've tried other stuff. I've tried to be, and I'm just like, those are my three things. It's just who I
Right.
am. And I can play other things, and I love playing hollow body guitars and doing things like that. But man, it's just, you're right. It's like it's just our conditioning, I think. It's hard to say.
It's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of our tastes. It's a mixture of what we love, And like when we were, like I'm saying about the mystery of records, you heard some record and you loved it, and then you maybe saw inside somebody playing the guitar, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't see the photo till later. Let's say, obviously we were a little older when this came out, but like, I mean, I was 13, but like, let's say Danzig, the first Danzig LP came out.
Yeah.
There are no photos of them playing instruments in
Right.
there. So you didn't see until you saw in fucking Metal Maniacs or Thrasher or something that he's playing a BC Rich bitch. And you didn't
Right.
hear till later on what amp they're using or whatever. So there's that mystery. And when you're looking for that magic of that sound, and then you see what it is, that imprints in your brain. So yeah, it is conditioning, but it's also taste, and it's also like the cream of the crap rises, right? So it's like, it's certain things that are great. A Les Paul is the ultimate rock guitar because it
Yeah.
beat everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
It just
it
lasted.
right. It is evolutionarily the winner, right? And
Yeah.
so that's it's all those things combined, and then it comes to taste. And I think that's awesome. It's like what you do, and I think for somebody especially like you who plays live so much and in like such large and like high intensity environments, you need a guitar that is like perfect, indestructible,
Yeah.
just like a fucking brick. And that's what the Les
Yeah.
Paul is,
It really is. It
yeah.
really is. And it's funny. I wasn't much of a Les Paul player. I was, but not as much before Rise Against. In Guar, I just played cheap, crappy, whatever I would get for free. And Hackfish, I was always with SGs. I was like an SG guy,
Okay.
and different. I wasn't much of a Les Paul. It says, look, they're heavy, and I'm a little guy and all that stuff. And yeah, once I started, it's like fuck.
Right.
Like I
Right.
guess I'm a Les Paul guy now. But
Yeah.
lately, I've been a Telly guy, man. I've been,
Nice.
yeah, it's kind of weird, but I mean, I'm still Tellys with humbuckers and the
Right.
same four knobs, and it's like Les Paul guts, but it's a
Right.
Telly shape at least. Anyway, well, Ryan, I will not take much more of your time, but everybody heard it here. Coliseum, CLSM. Will be
Yes.
putting out a new record, and you will be touring Fotocrime next year as well, correct?
Yeah, we're going to Europe in December, and then seeing what happens next year. We're kind of working all that out right now, trying to
Awesome.
just get out there. Yeah.
Well, I've heard the new Coliseum record, and man, it's a barn burner. It's amazing, and I love
Thanks,
it.
man. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I love you too, buddy. And it's so good to see you.
Great to see you. Love you. It's such a pleasure. I would
Yeah,
talk
man.
for fucking ever, man.
I know. I would too. I would too. All right, take care, bud.
All right, later.
Bye bye. There he is. There he is, folks. I love him. What a good guy, man. What a really good guy. Ryan also had his brother was in a band called the Young Widows, and man, what a great band that was as well. You should check that out. They were put out a few records. I don't think they're doing stuff anymore, but man, what a cool band. They also Ryan and his brother actually had a band together called Black Cross, and man, that was a great band. Just he's Louisville, Kentucky, man. I mean, what can you do in Louisville, Kentucky, but be a very interesting musical artist? you know, I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Anyway, all right, folks. Well, here at the end, I'm going to leave you with a wonderful example of Ryan's riff work, and I like this. And it conjures up some Killing Joke. We talked about that, and anything Killing Joke is all right by me. This song is called "Blind of One Eye." It's off their album "House with a Curse" that came out in 2010. They were touring this record when we toured with them, and so I'm partial to it. But also, my father was blind in one eye, and uh, so I have a sort of affinity for that. It sort of hits a soft spot in my heart as well because I had to deal with that with my father. But anyway, check this song out. Check out Ryan's guitar playing. Check out anything Ryan's done. Check out Fotocrime, his new Coliseum project, which, as you heard, CLSM. It'll be out soon. On the Equal Vision record label. They do great things as well. Check out Ryan. check out all of my guests because they're all great. They're all fantastic. I'm going to thank the folks over at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals. Check out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. I'm also going to really, really thank the folks over at DistroKid. They're helping artists like you, like me, like all of us, cut out the middleman, man. Cut out the labels. You want to put out a record on your own? Talk to the folks over at DistroKid. Look at what they're doing. They're going to help you put your stuff on all the streaming platforms. They're going to help you self-release. They're going to give you the keys to the kingdom, folks. Okay. Thanks again. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for listening to me go on and on and on and chat and talk to all of these folks. You keep listening. I'll keep doing them. I'll talk to you soon.